Nasalization is yet another important process in the study of phonetics and phonology. Basically, nasalization is the result of, the oronasal process, right? Oronasal, when your soft palate, when it is working, it is active. When it is raised, then the air is pushed through your oral cavity. When it is down, then the air is allowed to go through your nasal cavity. So the process which is taking place is nasalization. Nasalization is important for various reasons because in some languages, nasalization is phonemic, right? We've got nasal sounds, and there is a difference between nasal and nasalization. Nasal are the sounds which are by default nasal. Like in English, there are three sounds which are nasal: ma, na, and engma sound, eng, right? So these three are nasal sounds. But a sound is nasalized when it is not a nasal sound by default, but just because of a contextual occurring in a specific context, the sound has been made nasalized. So there is a difference between a nasal and nasalized, right? A nasal vowel and a nasalized vowel, right? Maybe a nasal consonant and then a nasalized consonant. So we must know that difference also. Nasal, when the air is escaping through your nasal cavity, that sound is nasal. And similarly, with the nasalization, the air is allowed to go through your nasal cavity. In a particular context, the nasal sounds are created. The air passage is allowed to divert through your nasal cavity. Otherwise, that sound is by default an oral sound, right? So that sound is particularly called, a nasalized sound. There is an example, like when I call you that this can't, it becomes can't. And the a sound is basically, it becomes nasalized. You can see in this, transcription, this a sound has been nasalized because there is a tilde. This is called tilde. This tilde is placed above the vowel, right? And this is phonemic. Again, like we discussed, the aspiration, which is phonemic in Urdu, this nasalization is also phonemic in Urdu. And that's the case with some more languages also. Like this nasalization is also phonemic in French language, right? Which is very, well-known name is Maupassant. So Maupassant, the French writer, there is the nasalization also, or a nasal vowel also in that name, Maupassant. So we can take examples from Urdu also, like how this is, phonemic in Urdu when it is changing the sound. But before giving you the example of Urdu, let me tell you that in English, nasalization is when a vowel is, most of the time, it is done with vowels. When a vowel is made nasalized. Like one more example, lamb. Lamb, the a sound has been nasalized and it becomes eh. Right? So this difference between a and eh, that is called nasalization. And in Urdu, as per the study of Dr. Sarmat from UAT Lahore, there are 7 vowels which are nasal vowels, right? Those are by default nasal vowels, right? So Urdu has got a very rich inventory from nasalization point of view, right? And I can give you a very good example from Urdu, like how is a sas, sa, and sa, sas, mother-in-law, right? Mother-in-law, sas. But when the a sound, which is a nasal sound, then it is phonemic, it changes the meaning. So the sas would become sans, like breathing or oxygen, right? So that sas and sans difference is a very good example from Urdu, right? So nasalization is phonemic in Urdu. And this understanding and this description of nasalization is really important for the students of phonetics and phonology because in order to define specific context within transcription, we also need to know that how it is put, like how it is explained, right? And then also in order to explain the rules of a language, that in what particular context a sound is made nasalized. So that's a requirement from the students of phonetics and phonology, that they should be able to understand what is taking place behind, right? Like what is there in the in-depth analysis, which is making that a sound, a nasalized sound or a nasal sound. So there is, a requirement from the students of phonetics phonology, not only to explain to describe these sounds, these processes which are involved in the making of a sound nasalized, but also the phoneticians are required to describe the logic behind that, the allophonic variation which is taking place, and then also to realize that through transcription.